Working. Working the graveyard shift at a gas station isn't the most exciting job, but I needed the money, so I took it. The station is small on the edge of town, surrounded by trees at night. It feels like the middle of nowhere. The only light comes from the neon sign and the few flickering street lights. It's quiet, too quiet sometimes, and the silence makes every little sound seem louder. I've been working there for about 6 months. The job was simple: sell gas, snacks and drinks to the occasional customer, clean the store, and keep an eye on things. Most nights were uneventful, but sometimes I got a weird feeling like someone was watching me. I tried to brush it off as my imagination. It was a Wednesday, and things were slow. The clock had just struck midnight, and I was restocking shelves. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up expecting a customer, but there was no one there. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe the wind had moved the door. A few minutes later, I heard a noise outside. I went to the window and saw a man standing by the gas pumps. He was just standing there, staring at the station. It was unsettling. He didn't move for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he walked towards the door as he entered. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was tall, with dark hair and piercing eyes that seemed to look right through me. His clothes were old and dirty, like he had been traveling for days. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there looking around the store. Then he approached the counter. "Can I use the bathroom?" he asked, in a low, raspy voice. I hesitated. Our bathroom was for employees only, and I didn't feel comfortable letting him in. "Sorry, it's out of order," I lied. He didn't seem to believe me. He just kept staring, his eyes boring into mine. "Please, I need to use the bathroom," he insisted. I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but it's not working. There's a public restroom down the road." He didn't argue, and instead he turned and walked out the door. I watched him as he got into his car, an old beat-up sedan, and just sat there staring at the station. I tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He was still there watching. Hours passed, and he didn't move. I called my boss, explained the situation, and he told me to keep the doors locked and call the police if anything happened. I felt a little better, but the man's presence was unnerving. Around 3 a.m. I heard a noise outside. It sounded like footsteps, but when I looked out the window, I didn't see anyone. I went back to my work, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the station into darkness. My heart raced. I grabbed my flashlight and checked the fuse box. Everything seemed fine, but the power wouldn't come back on. I heard another noise, this time from the back of the store. I shined my flashlight in that direction, but there was nothing there. I decided to call the police. As I reached the phone, I saw the man again, standing by the back door, staring at me through the glass. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. The operator answered, and I explained what was happening. They assured me that an officer was on the way. I stayed on the line, my eyes never leaving the man. He didn't move, just kept staring. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of a police car. The officer arrived and shined his flashlight around the station. The man was gone. The officer checked the area but found nothing. He took my statement and told me to call if anything else happened. The power came back on shortly after he left, but I couldn't shake the fear that lingered. The rest of the night was quiet, but I couldn't relax. Every sound made me jump, and I kept looking out the window, expecting to see the man. When my shift finally ended, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. I told my boss what had happened, and he promised to review the security footage and contact the police again for the next few nights. I couldn't stop thinking about the man. Who was he? What did he want? Why did he just stand there watching? A few weeks later, I saw a news report about a man who had been found dead in his car not far from the gas station. The police said he had been there for days, possibly even weeks. They didn't know how he died, but the description matched the man who had come to the station that night. The thought that he had been watching me even after his death sent chills down my spine. I quit the job. Not long after that, the experience was too much for me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even in my own home. Sometimes late at night, I still get that feeling. I look out the window, half expecting to see him standing there, staring, waiting. Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks, working at the quiet gas station in our small town was a job I enjoyed. I liked the night shift because it was calm and peaceful most nights. Not many people stopped by, and I liked that I had time to think, read a book, or just enjoy the silence. The gas station was on the edge of town, and the nights were usually very quiet. One night it was particularly still. The air was cool and the stars were shining brightly in the dark sky. I was inside the small store, sitting behind the counter. The only sounds were the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft buzz of the overhead lights. It was a perfect night. Hours passed without any customers. I checked my watch. It was almost 2. I got up to stretch my legs and decided to do a quick check around the store. I walked through the aisles, making sure everything was in order. The chips were neatly stacked. The drinks were chilled and the candy bars were lined up perfectly. I smiled to myself, feeling a sense of pride died in my work. I walked towards the restroom to make sure it was clean. No one had used it in hours, so it should be fine. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The restroom door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had closed it earlier. My heart started to beat a little faster, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I had just forgotten to close it properly. I pushed the door open and peeked. Inside, the restaurant was empty, just as I expected. I let out a sigh of relief and closed the door, making sure it clicked shut this time. I went back to my spot behind the counter and sat down, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. Minutes turned into hours, and soon it was almost 3 a.m. I was reading a book, getting lost in the story, when suddenly I heard a noise. It was a soft thud, as if something had fallen. I looked up, my heart racing again. I listened carefully, but the store was silent once more. I tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't focus. I kept glancing up, feeling someone was watching me. Then it happened. The restroom door burst open, and a person stumbled out. They were sweaty and looked panicked. Their eyes were wide with fear, and they were breathing heavily. My heart almost stopped. I had been alone for hours. How could someone be in the restroom? The person didn't say a word. They just dashed past me and ran out of the store. I was too shocked to move or say anything. I just watched them disappear into the night. Sat there, stunned and confused. Who was that? How did they get in, and why were they so scared? I got up and walked towards the restroom again, my legs feeling shaky. I pushed the door open, half expecting to find something terrible inside, but the restroom was empty, just as before. There was no sign that anyone had been there. No belongings, no mess, nothing. I checked the security cameras, hoping they would give me some answers. I rewound the footage and watched it carefully. I saw myself walking towards the restroom earlier then. Sitting behind the counter, I fast-forwarded, and then I saw it. The restroom door slowly opened and the person stepped out. But before that moment, there was no one. The camera showed an empty restroom the whole time. It didn't make sense. I felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't explain what I had just seen. I called my manager, even though it was late. I needed to tell someone. When he answered, I tried to explain what had happened, but he sounded half asleep and told me to lock up and go home. He said we would look at the footage together in the morning. I did as he said. I locked the store and walked to my car, feeling the weight of the night on my shoulders. The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about the person who had burst out of the restroom. Their fear was real, and it scared me too. The next day, my manager and I watched the footage together. He was just as puzzled as I was. We couldn't find any explanation. There were no other entries on the cameras, no signs of forced entry, nothing. It was as if the person had appeared out of nowhere. We checked the restroom thoroughly. There were no hidden doors, no SEC secret passages. It was just a regular restroom. My manager tried to reassure me, saying it was probably a prank, or maybe I was just tired and imagining things, but I knew what I saw. The fear in that person's eyes was real. I continued working at the gas station, but the nights were never the same. Every creak and every noise made me jump. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, something that didn't belong in our world. The calmness I once loved about the night shift was gone, replaced by a lingering sense of dread. To this day, I still think about that night. I wonder who that person was and what they were running from. And sometimes late at night, when I'm all alone, I feel a cold breeze and hear a faint thud, and I remember the fear in their eyes. Work the graveyard shift at a gas station. It is a lonely job, especially at night. The gas station is on a quiet highway far from the town at night. It feels like I'm the only person in the world. The gas station is old. The Lights flicker sometimes and the paint is peeling off the walls. There is a small store inside where we sell snacks, drinks, and basic supplies. My job is to keep the place clean and help the few customers who come in one night. Around 2 a.m., I was sitting behind the counter trying to stay awake. The night was very quiet, and I could hear the crickets outside. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and I heard a strange noise from outside. It sounded like someone whispering. I went to the window and looked out. The parking lot was empty, and there were no cars at the pumps. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to shake it off and went back to my seat. After a few minutes, I heard the noise again. It was louder this time, like someone was right outside the door. I got up and walked to the door. My heart was pounding in my chest. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cold night air hit my face. "Hello?" I called out. There was no answer. I looked around but saw nothing. I went back inside, feeling uneasy. I locked the door behind me as I sat back down. The phone on the counter rang. It was strange because the phone rarely rang at night. I picked it up. "Hello?" I said. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard the whispering again. It was faint, but I could hear it clearly through the phone. I hung up quickly, my hands shaking. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was just a prank, I thought, but deep down I knew something was not right. I decided to keep busy to take my mind off it. I started stocking the shelves and cleaning the floor. As I was working, I heard the bell above the door ring. Someone had come in, but no one was there. The door was closed. My heart raced as I walked to the door and looked outside. The parking lot was still empty. I checked the security cameras. They showed the parking. The inside of the store. I rewound the footage to see if I had missed something. The cameras showed the door opening by itself. No one was there. The door opened and the bell rang, but there was no one on the screen. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I decided to call my manager. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang and rang, but there was no answer. I left a message telling him what had happened. I hoped he would call me back. Soon as I hung up, I noticed something on the counter. It was a small, old-looking book. I had not seen it there before. I picked it up and opened it. The pages were yellowed with age, and the writing was hard to read. It looked like it was written in a different language. I felt a strange compulsion to read the book. As I turned the pages, I felt a cold breeze blow through the store. Even though the door was closed, the lights flickered again, and I heard the whispering louder. This time it sounded like it was coming from all around me. I the book and stepped back. The whispering continued, growing louder and more intense. I covered my ears, but it did not help. The voices were inside my head. They were saying things I could not understand, but I felt their meaning. They were angry. I ran to the door and tried to open it, but it would not budge. The whispering was deafening. Now I felt like I was going to lose my mind. I banged on the door, screaming for help, but no one could hear me. Suddenly, the whispering stopped. The store was silent. The lights stopped flickering, and the cold breeze was gone. I turned around and saw the book lying on the floor. It was open to a page with a strange symbol drawn on it. I picked it up and looked at the symbol. It was a circle with a star inside it, and strange writing around the edges. As I stared at it, I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a feeling of peace. I closed the book and put it back on the counter. I did not know what had just happened, but I knew I needed to get out of there. I grabbed my keys and went to the door. This time it opened easily. I got in my car and drove away from the gas station as fast as I could. I did not look back. When I got home, I called my man again and told him I was quitting. I could not go back to that place. I never found out what caused the strange events that night. I do not want to.